Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our closing keynote speaker, John Abel. John is a technical director and part of the sustainability group within the office of the CTO at Google. He's experienced in sustainability solutions and using emerging technologies to reduce carbon emissions. John began his technology career over 30 years ago. He had many roles at various tech sector companies, including at Oracle and now at Google in sustainability and data technologies. And that experience has led him to be a very interesting keynote speaker. Please welcome on stage, John Abel.
Sorry, when I'm walking up on stage now, I did some gardening at the weekend and I forgot my age. So I got very, very bent and I'm very broken at the moment. So if I walk like that, it's not because I've already hit the bar and I've come up here. I've actually just done some gardening, and I don't recommend it. It should be a dangerous sport because it certainly, especially when I'm doing it with my 4 daughters that seem to be much better at it than I am. So, but no, it's fantastic being here. Quite a scary audience for a tech person. I do worry about this, but I've kept the slides to a minimum. What I thought today I'd do is start, and actually the last panel was amazing, actually, really helpful, because I agreed with actually nearly all the points there that were raised. But what I want to start with is go back in history. I like to just reflect on what's happened in the world. If I go back to 1950, so on our timeline here, if I go and walk outside the conference centre to 1950, there was a technology that was built called reinforcement learning that didn't have its peak time. What is this reinforcement learning? It's actually one of the fundamental cornerstones to this technology called generative AI. And I'm going to break it down because I think it's important that we know about this. So reinforcement learning, I will use tennis, if that's okay, the game of tennis, to just explain it. Reinforcement learning, if we took the actor, who is a tennis player, we took the rules of tennis, and then we took the court, we know that we get certain points for getting our ball in certain parts of the court and the other opposition not returning it. We know that's how you get points. What reinforcement learning did was actually accelerate the machine's ability to learn incredibly quickly. And actually back in about 2016, we had AlphaGo, that DeepMind, and obviously if you're not aware, DeepMind is part of the Google family. And actually they accelerated to the point it could be a chess champion. Now the important thing about AI is it's very good at being creative of the past. I'll say that again, it's very good at creative of the past. The person's gift is creativity of the future where there is no past. And I start with that because what we're seeing in the world at the moment is actually it's people and technology that are getting the biggest rewards. Neither technology or people individually are not. So when you're looking at this technology and actually knowing that technology is accelerating through things like reinforcement learning, you know that actually we as society will have to use 3 words. 1, we're going to have to let our creative skills really become strong, because that's the gift of being a person. The second point is we're going to have to be agile and flexible. I don't think in my history has a technology changed so much in a short period of time. I was lucky or unlucky to work in the .com period. I would say this is even more accelerating of technology. And actually, the panel talking about the ethics and the regulation, applaud them because that's really important. Because what you will notice is that we didn't go first in a technology that we built. So if we go forward in time to 2017, one of the technologies that Google Brain developed was this thing called Transformer. It's in the word of GPT, General Purpose Transformer. The last word is the word of that technology. The reason why is ethics is incredibly important. And actually, we had to understand it. We didn't want incorrect hallucinations. We wanted it to be very grounded. We wanted to make sure we understood it. We still don't know all of it, but what we do know is we know the boundaries that we can put. And we really applaud regulation in this space. I really like the GDPR Act because it's very, very clear for me to know what I've got to do as a technologist. And I applaud the previous comments on the panel. What we do know, though, is probably everybody in this room is using AI every part of their day already. You just don't call it AI. So if you go back to 2015, you can see Google Photos uses AI to find images inside your photos, so you didn't have to tag them. The problem is when you're dealing with certain data types like text, it's an easier opportunity to get right. The problem is when you're dealing with images, it's easier to get it wrong because there's different ways you can interpret it. So one of the things you'll find is that you've got to get used to that we're dealing with text, video, sound, images, and all of the above and more. We even have the ability today to have a robot use a large language model. A piece of research that was done recently, it was called RT-2. The reason I have to say it that slow is I keep wanting to call it RD2, like in Star Wars. So for me, the important point here is robots can use large language models to actually understand the objects they're looking at using a large language model called a vision large language model. So it's not just text, which is what most people think it is today. So in the future, we're going to have this acceleration in technology. And obviously, Google launched its Bard in 2023. One of the things you'll notice is the top two figures. We have a huge responsibility as Google, and we have to invest in the research and the ethics. And actually, most of the technology that's critical to AI and generative AI is open source. And the reason we did that is because one of the elements you've got to do is have explainability. And actually, our explainable AI tools are open source. And I urge you to read about these. And the reason we made them open source, we wanted to be accountable by others. And I think it's a really important point that actually we can't have this technology as black box. It has to be open and usable by all. The other thing you'll notice is we do a lot of research papers. And actually those research papers helps other people as well as us. And it's really important when you look at the business use cases. Now, what I thought I'd do is bring out 4 use cases for this industry. I thought, now these don't exist, well, they may exist today, I don't know. But these are 4 that I thought about on the plane over from the UK. I think the one that we're probably going to see the most is this digital experience. So if you think about how you engage with your clients or how you engage with other peers in the industry, you're going to see the ability for this technology to create new levels of personalization. One of the things that's very frustrating as a user of services is when I have to answer emails when I get home at night. It's really frustrating. I get home at night and there's a plethora of emails. Oh, I'm buying a house. I should answer these questions. I've delayed the process. There is no, we're now starting to see hyper-personalized conversational interfaces. And this is actually looking at the persona. One of the things we've got to do in that is make sure we have explainability in how we got to certain decisions. Because AI is not going to be you. You are regulated like a financial institute. They're regulated by the EBA and the PRA, for example. You can't outsource that regulation. So one of the things you have to do is be fully understanding what you're using. So I think in the digital experience, we're going way beyond rule-based chatbots where they just have rules of engagement. We're also getting into the digital experience now where the classical interface isn't a screen like a website. It's a conversation saying, I'd like to use this product. Tell me the characteristics of the product. What's the price of the product? In India today, Max Life Insurance uses a conversational interface, a generative AI, to help people understand the terms and conditions of their insurance products. Now, interestingly, when they use that, that becomes their best sales line as well. Because when people go on there and say, am I covered for my holiday next week? I'm going skiing. And if they say no, rather than saying no, they say, by the way, that current policy doesn't, but I can extend it to cover that. Or tell me the most important terms in my contract that I need to understand that give me my biggest exposure. These are the type of things that Max Life Insurance is doing. The one that is going to be the most important is transcribe and summarization. The ability of going through and actually taking a huge corpus of text, a huge piece of textual imaging, it could be images, could be documents, and then getting summaries of that. Now, what's important of this one, it has to be grounded. It can't just hallucinate ideas of what it thought it saw. So actually going through and making sure you really document and understand what is the output that you're getting is going to be super critical. But already in certain industries like healthcare, my daughter is becoming a junior doctor and she does triage at the moment. And one of the things she does is she does about 60 triages a day when she's in trauma and in Cardiff. And one of the things that frustrates her is that she has to talk to a patient and then document what she's had. Most of her time is spent on documenting. What she would love is the ability to talk to the patient. Aspects of that are being documented in a secure and safe way. Notice that, a secure and safe way. And then she can read it and then validate that she's accepting what's been written. Already HCA Healthcare is doing this in the US in trials. So imagine your industry when you're going through very complex legal cases and jurisdictions, you can start getting your assistant to help you. Insights today, most executives use operational reports to look at how to do strategy for the company. They look at their sales data, they look at their supplier data, they look at their profit and loss. And when I used to have, in my previous role, I used to have a large P&L. One of the things I got is all the reports I got were about my operational side of my business. It wasn't about the strategy of the business. I had to go and interpret the operational side to make it usable by me when I was doing strategy. And that was time consuming. We're now getting to the point where you can talk to data. There is a semantic large language model that allows you to ask it questions and it does the technical work for you. I'm going to pause at this point because what's super important to understand, your best employee going forward is your knowledge expert in your business. That's you, by the way. The technology is getting easier to use and easier to adapt. The problem there is you have to know what you're dealing with. So you're going to have to equally invest in ethics and understand your assurances that you're putting on, but expect your users to be the business. And the technology boundaries that we have today are going to be moved away. This concept that came out a few years ago about no code or low code, the ability of not writing lots of technology, is really happening. And generative AI will accelerate that. The last one is assistance and toil. On that first slide, I didn't read out one of the dates, 2001, ML statistics. And the reason I didn't, I wanted to bring it out here. That was when Google started using machine learning 22 years ago. And that was to get us scale. If you have digital businesses or digital channels, if you're dealing with high volume transaction, one of the challenges we have is getting a large corpus of, or a large amount of talent. It's very hard to find talent at the scale of Google. And when you're dealing with all the billions of users we have, we use technology like AI to help us scale. So we call that internally toil. What we do in Google is we empower people if they spend more than 50% of their time on toil to engineer out for lasting value. What we mean by that is that actually they will use technology like AI to provide the ability to engineer out for lasting value. What that does mean is that some of the things you do today, you won't be doing in the future because it's toil. But remember that first word I used about being creative? It gives you the opportunity to create new businesses. There's going to be so many opportunities in artificial intelligence and generative AI. Where I want to finish on, though, is really talking about what I've been recommending to senior leaders. The first one is education, skills, understanding, learning, being inquisitive is critical. It's super important that we really get understanding this in our own right. We're going to have to invest time in this. It's going back to college, as I call it. You're going to have to go back and learn this because it's going to be a big part of your journey through life. The second is we're going to have to invest more in training. One of the things you might not know is Google's opened up freely all of our generative AI training. So you can look at it, you can use it, you can consume it without any barriers. And actually, it's not just dependent on Google. You could use it in any other cloud vendor. The other thing that you need to realize is your experiment in innovation is going to be very fast. Recently, I did a project on the 25th of July. We started the project on the 11th of July. That was to connect a Formula E car, an EV racing car in London, to enable the driver to talk to their car in voice and ask it questions while they were racing. Now, we did that in 10 days. In that 10 days, we had to tune the system many times to get it very accurate. It broke all the traditional design, implement, test. We were testing and designing and implementing at the same time. We only had 10 days. Don't expect this technology to take a long time to use it. Experiment and use it internally. Get to understanding it, get to knowing it, getting to know what you will do with it. One real strong recommendation, make sure you communicate to your employees. I'm going to say that again. Make sure you communicate to your employees what you're doing. Don't treat it as this hidden away skunk work project that's this magical, you will cause havoc. Be open in where you're going to be using it, how you're going to be using it. Make sure that people come on the journey, because this is people thinking about this, and this could be their livelihoods going forward. You want to embrace people. You want to get their feedback. You want to get what they like. We've done this recently with Key Insurance in London, which is a digital broker that massively reduced the time to get a quotation for the underwriting of property. They worked with all their underwriters and actuaries to get a good insight to what they didn't like doing, and that was the bit they focused on. Because at the end of the day, just like your industry, actually connections to people is really important. And actually that people-to-people communication is the thing we want people to spend time on, and actually putting your creative skills to the best use. The last 2 points is about ecosystem. You can't do this on your own. We can't do it on our own as a technology company. We have to do it together. This is where new partnerships will form and new relationships will form. We will never know your industry like you. I always say the best innovation comes from the people that know the industry, not from a tech company. It would take us too long to learn it. So working collaboratively is important. And then I finish on the most important one, the most critical one, the ethics and regulations that we're dealing with. I mentioned at the start that we have open sourced a lot of our technology so anybody can use it. We've also publicly shared all of our AI principles. And these 7 principles are accessible from Google anytime you want. All the key technology that you need to know how we do our ethics is open source as well. Because at the end of the day, that transparency is super critical. I'm not saying that we're at the end of it, we're at the beginning of it. But what we are is a very exciting time. And I think what we're going to see is many good solutions, but without the ethics and the regulation, there could be an alternative which is not so pleasant. And I really urge you to invest in that in your organizations and really get yourselves ready for this, because it is coming. And for me, it's a very exciting time as a technologist, but I'm also very wary that the job we have to do is also support people and educate people. And hopefully in this short amount of time, you've got a little insight to the world. And it's going to be exciting, but also we need to go slowly, and that's why we went slowly at the start. So thank you for inviting me here to Dublin. It's been absolutely amazing to see everybody. I always love coming here because it's actually got fond memories for me. And it's brilliant that a lot of you stayed, and thank you for that. So on that, I'm going to leave you. I'll be around for a bit if you want to come and have a chat, and wish you a great end of the conference. Thank you very much.